Hey, what's going on? It's the Dharma Guy here. You were listening to Dharma Time on WPSN Problem Solving Network. Welcome. Almost couldn't talk to you there for a second because my producer got caught up in the theme song and forgot to turn my mic levels up there, so that happens. Um, Having said that, I'd got to say thanks again to Mr.
Rat.
Yeah, of course. Thanks again to Jake Atkins, man. I'm telling you, I was a little ho-hum prior to this. I wasn't, I don't know, I'm in a weird mindset today. And listening to that theme song got me hyped up a little bit. So, well done, I guess. Anyways, welcome. Once again, Dharma Time. Let me go ahead and throw out some shout out, some love to our sponsors real quick. And yes, I'm going to keep reading it just because they're so important. I don't want to get them wrong. You have Retreat Premier Addiction Treatment Centers. And I think last week I kind of let everybody down last week. Last week I told this whole beginning story about how somebody who's associated with them, Tom Garofola, how he posted something online that kind of prompted this whole thought process for me. And I read it again last week on the Couch Live, which airs on Fridays, same network, at was it 12 o'clock on Fridays. And so I talked about it on there, but the dope doctor over here completely reminded me that I neglected to go into detail about it last week when I was talking to you guys. So Tom, my bad. I will say it was a fantastic one. Essentially, all it was just a post talking about how he's letting everything go. If you owe me money, don't worry about it. If you had beef with me, you won. If you don't want to talk to me, fine. Don't talk to me. I still wish you well. That kind of stuff. Went really well with what I talked about last week, and it's going to match up pretty well today as well, I guess. Having said that, I want to thank Journey Pure as well. Journey Pure, they're always awesome and good to us. Love having them on board. Matter of fact, I'm going to enjoy seeing them in the next coming weeks, and I'll announce why here in a second. I also want to thank Now Matters More Foundation. So thank me. You're welcome. So I'm the pres there, and we got the founder over here. So we do our best to make things happen for you. And of course, Orange County Drug Free Coalition, a huge supporter of the show, always there for us. The whole network, basically everything we do, both show and foundation related. Can't give them enough love for being such an integral part in what we do. Having said that, we do have a golf tournament coming up, so I got to do some shameless plug here. If you are a golfer, even if you're not a golfer, you just enjoy having a good time and being around golfers, by all means, come out. It's March 19th at the Aliqual Country Club, I think it is. I think it's like a weird double name thing there. But if you go to our website, nowgolftournament.org, has all the information as well as the ability to sign up as both a sponsor and player. We have plenty of spots left for both. However, they do fill up quickly. Speaking of quickly, look at that segue there. It's almost like I do this sometimes. Now, bear with me. Our lovely producer might have to chime in here for a second because I might not have the latest updates because it's constantly changing. But I do know Serenity Springs Recovery Centers has come on board as one of the sponsors for the golf tournament. Daryl Strawberry Recovery Centers as well. Daryl Strawberry's a huge supporter of the foundation, the shows, everything. Good guy. Journey Home is a good one, and Nova's Detox. So they're going fast. We do have some whole sponsors. We have some. I think the title sponsor is still sitting out there, but we have a lot of interest in that one. So if you're interested, by all means, get a hold of us. It's going to go quickly.
Well, the thing about Journey Home's a brand new program that we know of. I mean, it's not a brand new program, but it's a brand new program to the foundation.
Right on.
They came in as a raffle sponsor, which is really cool.
That's Courtney, isn't it?
On their inaugural thing, she is.
Yeah.
She is
She's
associated
our
with
secretary treasurer.
Correct.
Very
and
cool.
then, of course, Novus Detox is one of our event partners. So
Yes.
the other three were event partners.
Nova's Detox has been around since day one, man.
They've been an event partner from day one.
Yeah, they're awesome. Very, very, very grateful for Novus
and they're having a grand opening of a brand new
I didn't know
facility
that.
down in West Palm Beach. So
you heard it here first, kids.
So grand opening February 1st in West Palm, Novus Detox.
Very cool. I like it. You got to give them love, man. They've supported us from day one, and they've helped us do what we do. And for those of you who aren't aware, watching this, I am the president of the Now Matters More Foundation. You can find us at nowmattersmore.org. If you're not interested in golfing or participating in the festivities, but you'd like to give back, you can go to nowmattersmore.org and click the donate button, as well as kind of take a look at what we do. We help people find help for drug and alcohol addiction. We also help vet different programs, to let you give you some guidance, I guess, in navigating that whole system. And if you've ever had to do it, you know what I mean. And hopefully, if you've never had to do it, you never have to. But if you do, we're here to help, and feel free to reach out. Um, a couple other things before we get started today. I want to wish my son. I don't think he's watching at the moment, but hopefully I'll show this to him later. Hope you're doing well, buddy. My son, who's 6, had his tonsils taken out yesterday. He had his tonsils taken out, had his adenoids checked because I guess they were reduced earlier, and tube taken out and a patch put in. So he's enjoying some ice cream and Jello and whatnot this week. So wish him doing well. He's a little champ though, man. He comes out he comes out of recovery and just sits up and starts drinking like nothing ever happened to him. It's the most amazing thing. Everybody's worried that he's going to be crabby and fussy and hurting and stuff. He just pops right up and wants to start drinking. So very, very proud of the little guy. And
There's a lot of my listeners on our show that can relate to that.
the what now?
Just wanted to get up and just start drinking.
Oh yeah, exactly. So anyways, the other thing I have to comment on, and I'm going to preface this just a little bit, and sadly I can't control the volumes here, so pardon me ahead of time if somebody chimes in.
That is one big pile of shit.
Anyways, we'll wait till you hear what I got to say. So I am, for those of you who know me, I'm a 49ers fan, and day in and day out, I have to come in the studio, and right in front of my seat, I have to look. Oh, see, there it goes. I have to sit there and look at a terrible towel, right? I don't have anything inherently against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm not I respect the organization. Having said that, I was a little irritated when they passed us for the most championships in the league. So it did bring me just a smidgen, maybe just a smidgen of joy when they lost this weekend to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm not a huge Jags fan. Got to respect it. They come from Florida, and they went up to Pittsburgh and took care of the terrible towels. So kudos to Jacksonville, local team. Hopefully you guys go and do the exact same to the Patriots. I'd love to see that happen. I am anti-Patriots. I'm one of those guys. So it was good football, though. I do enjoy me some football, so I had to comment on that. Only because...
Game over.
Exactly. Just because I have to sit here and stare at this freaking terrible towel all day. Anyways, whatever. I'm a 49ers fan, man, so I got to complain about something. It's been a horrible, horrible season for us.
You're probably going to get a great pick in the draft, though.
I don't know. We'll see. That's what I thought until...
You'll probably pick a kicker.
Exactly. Because we got Garoppolo, and now all of a sudden we think all of our problems are solved, and we won like the last 5 or 6 games, I think. So it's like, what are you doing? But anyways.
Yeah, what's worse, to be a Cleveland fan or a San Francisco 49er fan? What do you think?
Oh, Cleveland by far. Well, I don't know. Because, see, with 49ers, we have hope and we have a tradition. See, with Browns, you can just expect to lose every year.
Yeah, but at least they have basketball.
Touche.
What do you have?
Well, I mean, I guess you have the Golden State Warriors, but I'm not a fan of them anyways. So.
Enough said. I'm out.
Yeah. So, anyways, all right. So this week we're gonna kind of stick with the theme, I guess, of yesterday. And let me reiterate once again, if there's any specific topics you guys like to hear about, feel free to reach out to me via social media, via email, go to YouTube, leave comments, whatever it may be. And there's something specific you want to hear about, or you like to get some spiritual perspective on, be it Buddhism in general or just spirituality in general, reach out and I'll do my best to incorporate it or answer questions. I've had some pretty good questions thus far, and I've done my best to answer them. Because at the end of the day, I'm trying to make some content for you guys. I've heard a lot of this, and I'm doing my best to provide you with value. And one of the things I see come up a lot, which is why I do my best to modify the show on the fly, if you will, is people taking things personally. It's one of the biggest ones I see constantly. And at the end of the day, our goal here in practicing spirituality isn't so we can go around and be proud of the fact that, hey, I practice spirituality, or tell your friends, pat yourself on the back. At the end of the day, we're doing it because we like to make our lives better and maybe even make the lives of those around of us better. Around of us. That was a horrible phrase there, but improve the quality of life of those around us as well as ourselves. That's at the end of the day what our goals are. And so I do my best to kind of see areas where that can be improved and try to facilitate that. So be it doing groups in the counseling world with drug and alcohol addiction, be it my own personal life, be it my friends and family, be it reality shows I see or some of the other programs and things that we do when we're not on air. one of the things I see pop up all the time is just people taking stuff personally, and some of the weirdest possible ways people take things personally. That if you think of it objectively, it sounds ridiculous, but in the middle of it, it's so easy to get caught up in it. So I think I'm gonna spend some time talking about that today. Um, as always, I'm gonna start out first with a couple truths. We gotta remember to keep as the basis of what we're doing in here, and that is, pain is a part of life. No matter how many quote unquote right decisions you make, no matter what you try to do, things are gonna happen that you're not happy with, I guess. The second truth, which is probably the most important with what we're gonna discuss today, is you cause your own suffering through aversion and through clinging. So, in other words, trying to make your life perfect and awesome all the time causes this internal turmoil that we think just comes in life, but no, we're actually very much in control of that. Third one is you don't have to suffer, which is by far my favorite of all the truths I've ever heard. You don't have to suffer, and that's by far my favorite. It's also the most confusing for a lot of people, only because we associate so much emotional turmoil or expectations, I guess, to certain things. And then the fourth one, of course, is the way, and that's the Eightfold Path, which is kind of where we're at the moment. A lot of stuff that we talk about just builds on those basic structures. So if you don't have those basic structures, you really kind of need to pay attention. Go back and watch the old videos, man, or reach out and I'll help. Anyways, so right understanding is kind of the one that I was talking about last week. And right understanding, I used to break it down mainly because I had a very short amount of time to do a straight up lecture based event, if you will, a group with people. I had to get really good at making it very precise and very, very, straight to the point. And I didn't elaborate much on it. And that is, I would always say it's broken down to two main concepts, right? The first concept is we have to wrap our heads around the idea or understand, if you will, for right understanding, that the first four truths are true. And I think it's such an easy concept. You hear them and you're like, oh, I get it. 2 + 2 = 4. Like, I understand the four truths. The problem, though, is we forget to make that the cornerstone of our decision making. We understand it intellectually, but moving forward, the first sign of crisis, the first sign of suffering or pain, I should say, it kind of goes out the window sometimes, and we totally forget, and we convince ourselves, we justify our anger, our frustrations, or whatever it may be. And so we have to keep that as the first part of the right understanding is coming from a place to where the four truths are true. Coming from a place to where you understand that you're never going to escape pain. Stop trying. It's never going to happen. I know I sound like a broken record, but I promise you there's somebody out there right now who's saying to themselves, oh yeah, I forgot about that. There's somebody right now who maybe had a whatever day and they're upset and they're blaming the world for everything, and they stop to realize, like, oh no, why did I expect it to be different? Life is just life. It's not happening to me. It's just happening and I'm experiencing it. And then the second half of that, which was a little bit more complicated, I used to break it down simply by saying, and bear with me, your brain, through a process called dependent origination, is going to deem every single thing that you come in contact with throughout your life or day as positive, as negative, or as neutral. Meaning, I like it, I don't like it, I really don't care. And the problem I see a lot of times, first of all, that's a very watered down, very vague definition of what dependent origination is, and I'm going to try to go a little bit deeper in it today. But it gets to the point of a lot of people, when they start this journey to being more spiritual, and they see individuals like myself who practice Buddhism, or they see other individuals who practice whatever their version of spirituality may be, and then instantly expectations are placed on them, be it on themselves or others onto them. And that expectation is one that you're going to always be calm, cool, rational, relaxed, and just happy-go-lucky, and you love everything, and you never get upset. Um, yeah, that's complete and total BS, right? It's impossible to be like that. And one of the reasons why it's impossible is the concept of dependent origination. And so I'm going to give you a brief explanation, then I'm going to go through the actual terminology and help you understand that a little bit. But dependent origination just simply means that nothing can exist outside of the things leading up to that existing. So one of the examples I hear oftentimes is, in order to have a flame, you would have to have the oil and the wick, or the fuel and the wick, however you want to word it. You take away one of those two elements, and the fire completely disappears. It cannot exist without one of those. And so your anger, your frustration, your current mindset cannot exist without the perception that you already have and the expectations that you placed on what's about to happen. Without those both things in place, your suffering cannot happen. So that's where the whole new perspective comes in. That's where we have to start the process of accepting things as they are, not as we want them to be. We have to start that journey, and it begins at that perspective, the perspective of it is what it is. And so, I think it was Louie and I were talking the other day. Excuse me, the dope doctor and I were talking the other day. We were saying how, asking somebody, "What is this in front of you? Is this a chair?" And people say, "Yeah, no, it is what it is." And it sounds funny. It's a funny little phrase that they use in like Zen Buddhism, I believe. But it's the truth, right? That chair is only a chair because somebody at one point said, "Hey, I'm going to make a chair," and they decide to get all the materials together and create that chair. But without the steps prior to that, without somebody first saying, "Hey, I'm going to make a chair," and then doing the process of building the chair and putting it together, it never would have become a chair. And so, dependent origination kind of revolves around that. The process of dependent origination. If anybody Googles this, please do it with a grain of salt, because you're going to find ridiculous amounts of explanation, half of which are going to be like, "What the hell was just said?" And I'm going to do my best to break it down a little bit further for you. But just the cool part is you don't have to understand all of it for it to make an impact. So if you don't understand some of it, you listen to me and you're like, "I don't know what the hell he's saying," or you go read up stuff and you're even further confused. It's okay. You can still practice this. You can still reduce your suffering without fully understanding everything. So anyways, I'm going to have to read this for a second just so I don't screw up the actual terminology, and then I'll give you an example. There's 12 steps in dependent origination. And keep in mind, this process happens internally in our mind, happens hundreds of times, if not thousands of times a day. Every single time you make any sort of decision, there's a process of dependent origination that takes place ahead of that decision being made. Meaning, nobody arbitrarily or accidentally decides, "Hey, I'm going to go buy this today." It's a process that occurs. So, with dependent origination, it starts out with ignorance. Ignorance is, "Hey, I'm just minding my business, walking down the street, not doing anything." Then the second one is mental formations, which would be your thoughts or your emotions. Then that leads to consciousness. Then it leads to material form. Then it leads to your six senses. Then it leads to contact. Then it goes to feelings. This would be your pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Then it goes to craving or aversion. I want it, I don't want it. Then it goes to grasping or averting. I have to have it or I don't want it at all. Then becoming, then birth, and finally suffering. I know that sounds complicated, and I'm not going to solve all of that today, but I'm going to do my best to just give you a jump start on it. So, example that I hear most often with this, that I've kind of over the years grown accustomed to, because on some level we can all relate to it. Imagine you're walking down the street, minding your business. You're not really paying attention. You look over and you see an ice cream store. And then when you see the ice cream store, first of all, it was ignorance. You see the ice cream store, then that's where the mental formations. That's when you start to say, "Oh, hey, I like ice cream. I remember that I enjoyed ice cream, and now I want to go check it out," which would then be your consciousness. You made a conscious decision to walk over there and look at the store, which would also be the material form. In this case, it would be your physical body. You physically walked into the store. The six senses, that's when you're smelling the creaminess of the ice cream and the sweetness or whatever it may be. The contact, same kind of difference, just a little bit further advanced. And then the feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. You've went ahead and decided this is a pleasant experience, that you like it. Then the craving starts to happen. So not only decided it's pleasant, now I've decided, "Oh my gosh, I have to have some." And then that's when the grasping comes into play. So now, not only am I going to have some, but now I need the biggest triple scoop, double fudge. I mean, the biggest that I can possibly get. I got to have it all. And then that's when the becoming. That's when you have just a little bit and you eat even more. You know you should stop. And then you start thinking, "Oh my God, what's wrong with me?" That's where the birth comes into play. And then finally the suffering. So that's just a really big, sexy way of saying that's the process our brain goes through when we decide that, "Hey, how do I go from walking down the street minding my business to I'm hating myself because I ate too much ice cream. I should have stopped a long time ago." Now, the crappy part is you can't really control this process. What you can control is the moment that you deem something positive, negative, or neutral. The moment you say, "Hey, I like that," or "Hey, I don't really like that," you can decide from that point forth how you respond to it. So you can decide, I like it, it's cool, I'm gonna carry on with my day, or maybe I'll have a taste, or whatever it may be, or I don't like that, and that's okay. So that's the only point in which we have control, right? And so how this all revolves around this concept of taking things personally. Why I decided to stick with this one, this modality, if you will, today, is too often times I see people deem something as a negative. Like somebody said something to me, I didn't like that. And then, as I talked about last week, they fill in that narrative about the intentions and the motivations of the person they're speaking with, and then that instantly turns into, oh, I can't believe they would do this to me. That's where the whole respect issue comes into play, and that's where the whole how dare they? I can't believe this. This whole litany of stuff starts to kind of fill in the gaps, if you will. And the problem is, we like to be right. And for those of you who know me, one of my biggest phrases I say constantly is, you can be right or you can be happy. And oftentimes those two things are not inclusive. Sometimes they're completely opposite. I personally used to love to be right all the time. Still like to be right, but I'd much rather be happy, which means oftentimes I have to just say the phrase, okay, you're right. So, taking things personally, a couple examples. Anybody here ever been driving down the street? And this is probably the most the most outrageous example that we all can relate to. Ever been driving down the street? Somebody cuts off in front of you, or blows past you, or whatever it may be, something you don't approve of on the streets, and you get upset. You get mad, you get angry, you get the road rage. You're like, why is this person doing this? I can't believe they did that. That is the definition of taking things personally. The thing you have to realize is it can't be personal, number one, because the person doesn't even know you. It's just a random person they're on their way in life trying to get where they got to get, and you just so happen to be next to them. And that's the theme, if you will, about taking things personal. The thing that we have to keep in mind is nothing is ever personal. And the amount of arguments and flack that I get from that, even still to this day, with people that I know and love, will come to me, and they will get me so much flack when I start to tell them nothing's personal. Because the moment I tell you nothing's personal, you immediately start thinking of the worst, nastiest thing that somebody's ever said or done to you, usually coming from a friend or a loved one, a relative, lover, whatever, that they should have known better, and then they just unload on you or whatever it may be, and you take it really personal because they should have known better. And that is the exact reason why I'm having this discussion, because I see it happen all the time. Uh, 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 that's the one of the most animated groups I have is when people start talking about this concept of taking things personal. They did it to me, and so the thing one of the analogies I typically like to use is if you walked into like a gym or something, and there was an individual in front of you sitting on a bench. They got their eyes closed and stuff, and they got their headphones on. They couldn't hear or see anything. They're over their shadow boxing. For those of you listening to the Couch Live, let's say we had Pinklin Thomas, who was one of our guests last. I think it was the week prior or last week. I can't remember, but Pinklin Thomas, ex-heavyweight champ. It's pretty safe to assume there's plenty of times while he was in the gym, he was probably sitting down shadow boxing, practicing his technique. So let's assume, for the sake of the conversation, you walked in, you see this person, they're shadow boxing, they're practicing, and you get it in your head that I'm going to go ahead and walk right in front of this person. Safe to assume you're going to get hit, right? Because they can't see you, they can't hear you. You decide you're going to walk right in front of them, and they hit you. And now most people, realistically speaking, wouldn't then get really angry and mad and say, hey, you hit me. They wouldn't go tell a story later on that this guy walked up and hit me, because you associate it with the idea, the concept that you walked in front of them. This person was already doing what they were doing. You decided to walk in front of them, so it's kind of on you at that point. Well, life is kind of the same. When you take something personal, when you say this person did this to me, in essence, what you're saying is this perfect and amazing and wonderful human being that never does anything wrong woke up this morning and decided that today, when they randomly encounter me, they're going to go ahead and do whatever it is that's pissing me off at the moment, or frustrating me, or hurting me, or whatever it is that I'm taking personal. Probably one of the best examples I've got, real world examples. This was years ago now, back when I was doing some classes at a local coffee shop on Saturday mornings. And I was doing some forgiveness talks, which we'll get to one of these days in here, but I'm going to hold that one in my pocket for a while because it's a big day. but we decided we're going to do a forgiveness talk. And I'll never forget it. It was one of my students that was she was awesome. Just a great student, very very hungry for knowledge, very willing to learn, very teachable. And until this day, the day that forgiveness came up, kind of just rubbed it the wrong way. I mean, she walked in, she just knew, hey, you're not going to make me forgive this person. It's not going to happen. Because that's typically how it goes down. When I start talking about forgiveness, you either think of something that you've done that's unforgivable or something somebody else has done that you can never forgive them for. And so, of course, that's where she went. So okay. So I sat down, started talking to her. I was like, all right, so this individual that you can't forgive, talk to me. What was it that was so bad, that was so personal, that you can't forgive them for? So they proceeded to tell me this journey that she's been on with this friend of hers. And within this journey, she included stories about how this individual lied, how they cheated, how they stole from them, how they were just rude and they were argumentary and just, you know, just not very pleasant to be around. Just kind of that individual. Towards the end of the story, she let it slip out that this individual was dealing with alcoholism at the same time. So that was the moment that I stopped her. I was like, all right, hold on, let me stop you right there. So what you're telling me is somebody who was struggling with the disease of addiction was lying to you, was cheating, was stealing, and was just kind of rude. Does that sound like anybody you've ever heard of or known personally or seen on TV, whatever you want to call it, that was dealing with the disease of addiction? Does that sound like kind of normal behavior from that? Yeah. And so by definition, it can't be personal because it's safe to assume that person was behaving that way, not only towards her, but towards everybody else in her life. In other words, she was unskillfully handling things in her life at that moment, and it just so happened to be spilling out onto that girl in front of her. And so, long story short, she ended up obviously realizing the necessity for forgiveness at that point, mainly because it wasn't for her. Obviously, it was for herself. But more importantly, it wasn't personal. And that's kind of what we have to start to realize, man. Hurt people hurt people. That's just how it goes. Oftentimes, we assume that the person that we're talking to, we assume it's personal when they attack us or when they bring up certain stories or anecdotes that have to do with us, vice versa. We start to kind of get upset and we think it's personal, that they should know better. But that's kind of that's on us. At the end of the day, it's on us. We're the ones that puts in the value. That person's just kind of saying words towards us, but at the end of the day, those words are just lashing out. That person's hurting. That person's struggling. That person isn't dealing with life well at the moment. They're unskillfully handling things, and they're lashing out at us. It's just spilling out onto the people around us. Because I think it's safe to assume that, once again, that person who is upsetting you at the moment, I'm going to go out on a limb and say they're not perfect. I'm going to go out on a limb that there's probably somebody else within their daily interaction. They could probably sit back and say, yeah, man, that such and such is a real pain in the butt, man. They were mean to me yesterday, or they lashed out, or I was really disappointed when this happened. And so by definition, it can't be personal if it's happening to multiple different people. It is personal in the sense it's personal to them. They're hurting, they're struggling, and they're taking it out on you. And that is by far, I know I try to break it down where it sounds simple, but by far that is one of the hardest things I see people having to deal with. I posted a poll on my social media pages a couple days ago. Got some interesting responses. Push past paralysis. I gotta say, shout out to you. You're awesome. You always are. You respond to everything. That's very cool. I also love your little the. I used to call them my old YouTube videos when I was doing training. I used to call them Trinityisms. But it's pretty cool how you find a phrase throughout it. I don't know how you do it because I couldn't even do it if I had to. But kudos to you. But one of the things that she pointed out was she struggles with that sometimes as well. And congratulations, everybody does. It's a normal thing. It is one of the hardest things to do is to not take things personally. I know in my own personal life, even excuse me, my own personal life. I have I'm a very sarcastic, very direct individual, and oftentimes that can offend people. It can make them think that I'm personally attacking them. It can even make them think that I'm upset and I took it personal, not realizing that's just my way. I'm a very sarcastic, very direct individual. That's my my thing that I have to kind of make sure that those around me are aware of that. And sometimes I do a great job, and other times not so much. But it definitely is an example of how things can be taken personally. And I'm guilty of taking things personally as well. I'm guilty of having people in my life that will say something to me, and that's where the perspective comes into play. That's why it's important to understand even interpretation versus what was said, because oftentimes they'll say something, but what you heard is completely different. And I think that's where the taking it personal comes into play. Is this individual is struggling or suffering or whatever it may be? They say a few things, we misinterpret that, we hear what we wanted to hear, we get upset, we took it personal, and then it goes back and forth. And then at the end of the day, you could be right or you could be happy. And so I'm not saying that you can't go around taking things personal. By all means, nobody's going to stop you. Feel free to go for it. What I am going to say though is if you choose to take things personally, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to find happiness. Because at the end of the day, we have to understand happiness is a frame of mind. Happiness is not the new whatever, the new gadget out there. Happiness is not, hey, everybody around me is acting the way I think they should act today. All my expectations are being met. That's not happiness. Happiness is a frame of mind because there's people out there with next to nothing, who live in filth, who live in poverty, who are still happy every day. So it's not material possessions. There's rich people who aren't happy. It's not the people around you because there's bosses and stuff out there who have employees who follow their every whim and every command, but yet they still go home unhappy. So it's not about people changing. We get stuck in this rut where we think other people have to change for us to experience peace, and that's just not true. At the end of the day, it's us. It's we are the only things that we can control. Our mindset, our perspective, and that's kind of what we're all talking about for last week and even this week a little bit is changing that perspective. Instead of coming from the perspective of, hey, this person's wrong, let me tell them how they're wrong. Hey, this person hurt me, let me tell them how they hurt me. Instead of listening to respond, or to react, we need to start listening to understand. Listen to understand their perspective, and then also understand our perspective, understand where we're coming from. Ourselves, meaning mindfulness, meaning why am I feeling this way? Why am I frustrated? Why am I taking this personally at the moment? What button inside of me did that touch that I feel the need now to lash out or respond to? That's where the mindsets of happiness starts to come into play. Because I've said it before and I'll say it again, happiness is so much closer to acceptance than it is to pleasure. We think once again that if only this, if this person changed, if I got this, that I'll be happy. No, it has nothing to do with any of that. It has to do with your mindset. It has to do with let me get to a point where I'm good and I'm content. And part of that process is the first part of the Eightfold Path, which is right understanding. So once again, understanding that the four truths are true. And I could literally kill dozens of hours talking to people about this because it's one of those things where it's so simple. Have you ever been busy in your day and you screw up something ridiculously simple, like you forgot to turn something off, or you forgot to move something out of the way, or you forgot to shut a door, something so mundane and so simple and so easy that you completely botched it and screwed it up, and then it set off a chain of events that ruined other things. That, my friends, that's the four truths. The four truths are simple, but they're not easy. You hear them and you immediately like, yeah, I get it. No, of course. But 9 times out of 10, when somebody comes to me and they're having issues and they're struggling with kind of how to deal with something, 9 times out of 10, it's their inability to not only understand the four truths but to properly apply them. And that's why I like to take them back at the beginning of it and say, okay, let's run through that and see how the four truths and the Eightfold Path could apply to it. And at the end of the day, that's kind of what spirituality is. Whether it be, you practice Buddhism like myself, whether it be you practice whatever religion, kind of however you define spirituality in your life, in theory, it should come with some sort of, I don't want to say how-to manual, but some sort of a directive, some sort of a guiding force, something that you can look at as bigger than yourself that helps you understand how to respond more skillfully to a certain situation. Because oftentimes we get emotional, we get upset, then we react, And that's where the problem comes into play, is because when we react, it's going to be based upon everything that we've currently been through in our lives and our expectation of what was going to happen next. And that, my friends, is a very dangerous combination, because, all the things that have happened to us in our past, whether we realize it or not, affect who we are as a person, who we think that we are. We convince ourselves that this is who I am. No, this is what you've learned to be. And that's where the dependent origination comes into play. In other words, your feeling of suffering could not survive without this dependent origination of your background leading up to this point and your expectation of what was going to happen next. And so that's where the right understanding comes into play, is we have to understand that concept. We have to essentially wash ourselves or cleanse ourselves of that previous mental formations that we had, because you can't use the same thinking and the same mindset that got you into the suffering that you're currently in to get you out of the suffering. It's got to be completely different. And so that's essentially where dependent origination comes into play. Is we have to understand this law of causality, this cause and effect that takes place in our lives, that keeps us stuck in this revolving loop consistently. And so, understanding it obviously is one part that leads us to the rest of the skill set that we kind of aim to build upon, but it has to start somewhere. And I think that's one of the best places to start for a lot of people, and some people are better at this than others. So if this is something that comes easy to you, congratulations, you're ahead of the game. If it's something you struggle with, it's okay. You don't have to completely understand it to get the benefit. And that's one of my favorite things about spirituality, is when you start to kind of come from a spiritual perspective as opposed to a selfish or a monetary or whatever perspective. It kind of starts to change your behavior pattern. I that's where it comes into right intent. Essentially, is putting your intent towards achieving something beneficial, and which we'll get into later. But anyways, so right understanding. So to kind of rehash a little bit about that, the way I break it down, and I don't mean to make this simple, because it's it is simple, but it's not easy. So I don't mean to break it down so simply that it feels like if you're not doing it right tomorrow, then you're doing something wrong. If you're not doing it right tomorrow, congratulations, you're human. If you're trying to practice a whole new spirituality, once again, whether it be Buddhism or whether it be anything else that you're trying to go for, and it's all great and all happy and all wonderful all the time, this pink cloud kind of idea, you're doing it wrong. It's supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be difficult. You're supposed to confront certain demons and confront certain perspectives that make you uncomfortable, that make you grow and make you ascend to that next level. Those are all fantastic, wonderful things to do. And so I know for me that was paramount in my growth, was just this understanding, this grasping of a concept. If I tell anybody out there who's over the age of, I don't know, I'm gonna say 10 at least, if I say to you 2 plus 2, you immediately think 4. You don't think yellow. You think 4. It's ingrained in us. You understand it. You don't question it. It's just a fact, and that's kind of what we need to do with spirituality. Whatever your spirituality is, whatever it is you think is going to lead to happiness, we need to kind of have that same kind of dedication, that same kind of understanding. So we have to realize that that cause and effect happens, and dependent origination is definitely one of those ones, man. It sucks, because oftentimes you get to feel judged or you feel bad, be it yourself or somebody else, because that is one of the biggest ones I see all the time, and I'm guilty of it in the sense of guilty of receiving it. There's a lot of people I come across who, when they hear that I practice Buddhism and teach it, or excuse me, spirituality in general, the expectations immediately go into this like Gandhi kind of persona, where I'm supposed to be this like Zen light master walking around all day long, that's not bothered by anything, that makes the best decisions 24/7, that is like this pillar of perfection. And I hate to break it to you guys, I'm nowhere near perfect, by all means, but it is a path that I walk, right? And so the idea, though, is when you walk the path, when you start to add the wisdom and you start to add the conduct and you start to be teachable and all these things work together, years down the road, you look back and see how far you come. And so I know, like, for instance, for myself, when I would first start, I would screw up every day. This was one of the hardest things I ever had to do, because it's human nature, guys. It's human nature to get upset. It's human nature to, I don't want to feel this feeling anymore, so I'm going to try to push it away. It's human nature to, hey, this feels good. I'm going to try to surround myself with it my whole life. It feels good, or it feels natural to think, oh, this person's not respecting me. This person doesn't appreciate me. Or hey, that's personal. I can't believe they do that to me. Those are all normal, natural things of a human being. The problem is those are excellent for survival, not so much for being happy. And at the end of the day, if you're listening to this, you're an expert survivor. Congratulations, you made it. How's that feel? Does it feel like you won? If it doesn't, then maybe we need to talk about being happy and not just surviving. So I know for me, survival just wasn't enough after a certain amount of time. I got tired of just feeling this ickiness, that wasn't happiness. I got tired of that. I got tired of relying on everybody else and blaming everybody else. At some point, you got to look inward and say, all right, maybe I could do things a little bit differently. And that starts with that right understanding. It starts with an understanding that stop trying to make life perfect and great all the time. Stop thinking that this person in front of you is going to respond or act the way you think they should respond or act. Start realizing that it's not the things that are around you that are causing your suffering. It's you. It's the fact that you keep trying to change the unchangeable. You keep trying to move the immovable. You keep trying to bend the unbendable. And what's making you suffer is your inability to do all those impossible things. And then the coolest one is you got to understand you don't have to do that. That's a huge one to understand. You have to understand that, though. It's not cool to just say it. It's not cool to just be, yeah, I get it, and then go back to doing whatever you're doing. I can't stress that enough, man. Like, you have to truly, truly understand it. Don't question it. It is what it is. Like, you have to, just put it inside you. I don't know how to explain it other than commit. You have to commit to that concept. It's not enough to just to say the words and pretend it. You got to truly believe it, and that's really understanding. When you understand something, it's much easier to adopt, and so that's why I went back through some of the four truths is to help understand those concepts. So right understanding. Like I said, you have to keep in mind that you don't have to be the Zen-like person. And for those of you who have somebody spiritual in your life, give them a little bit of slack. They're not perfect. They're unskillfully handling things and they're doing their best, just like everybody else around them. But don't get caught up in this idea of I should be this, right, or I'm not this, or whatever it may be. If something happens, you're going to get upset about it. You're going to not like it. That's not the problem. You're never going to stop that. The problem is when you have to have it a certain way. When you come into contact and you deem this as a positive thing or you deem this as a negative thing, what you do next, that's the most important part. So if that person in your life just said something to you that you didn't care for or you took personally, if that person cut you off in traffic and you just took it personally, if your boss is having a bad day and comes in and jumps all over you about doing whatever, don't take it personally. Say to yourself, that's not me. That wasn't intended for me. Hurt people. Allow it to be what it's going to be. That right there is going to make you happier. Won't make you right, but it'll make you happy. And the thing with being right, man, is it is exhausting. And I've never once met anybody who got into a pile of trouble, but was able to sit back and be like, oh, well, at least I was right, though. No. Most of them want to get out of whatever that trouble may be, get out of that feeling. And it doesn't matter if they're right at that point. So the right understanding, once again, understand how the four truths are true, and understand through a process of dependent origination that through everything you've been through in your life, the way your brain processes and works things out, you're going to deem every single thing positive, negative, or neutral, and you have no decision making on that. You have no control over what you like, what you don't like, and what you care about. It's what happens next. You have control of saying, hey, I'm going to let this bother me. I'm going to let this control me. I'm going to take this personal, or I'm going to let this be what it's going to be. Realize this is not my problem. Realize that's that person's truth. That's where they're at on their journey, and I'm going to let them be there. Sorry, because I'm losing my voice right now. Apparently, it's all that hooting and hollering I did for the rooting against the Steelers, I guess. So I really am losing my voice right now. I don't know what's going on. But sorry, I had to throw the terrible towel reference. Go Jacksonville. But anyways, so a couple other things for housekeeping and house cleaning I got to put out there. Once again, the golf tournament. Uh, we're so focused on that, guys. I got to put it out there. I'm gonna do a little tiny infomercial. I want to leave a couple minutes at the end of the show just to pat ourselves on the back, I guess, a little bit and promote. Only because we don't do a whole lot of it. We're lucky enough to have some really really good uh, 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 people around us that really believe in what we're trying to do. That helps us kind of not beat everybody over the head with it. Obviously, the more donations we get, the more people we can help, the more people we can touch. But this is our biggest event every single year, and it is coming up on March 19th. Go to nowgolftournament.org, and you can see the details, the date, the location, and you can go to nowmattersmore.org if you want to learn more about us and what we do. I do have some listeners on here from different parts of the country who might not know exactly what it is we do, but it is our biggest event, man. That is, if you guys knew how much money it takes to help somebody, and how far we make each dollar stretch, and how much we're actually able to get accomplished, it would make your head spin. And we wouldn't be able to do that without events like the golf tournament and some of the other things that we do. We got some fun stuff coming up later on in the year, by all means. And I love for everybody who's watching to participate in some of the stuff we've got going on. Even if you could donate $5, it still manages to help. It really, really does. Sometimes that's the difference on if we think we can help somebody or not. Because everything we make goes straight to helping people. And I want to say thanks again because they need some shout outs to Serenity Springs. They've been around for a few tournaments as well. I believe a couple of them, or all of them, haven't they? All but one, I think.
Yeah, they've been around for 2 years. This will be the third.
Okay. And Daryl Strawberries, this will be their third, I think, as well.
Daryl Strawberry, this will be the fourth, I believe.
Is it the fourth?
I think so.
Okay, because I know that one I was on the TV. I remember that one.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe you're correct. Maybe three.
I think it's three, but I could be wrong. But he's hooked. You know what I mean? Like
yeah. He's part of the deal.
Yeah. Once we got him on board, he's now part of the advisory council. I mean, he's
Right.
he's all in.
That reminds me, I have to get that jersey out of the car. There's one of the jerseys that he just gave us for the studio.
Oh, was that an actual jersey? I thought you were making that.
No, he gave us two jerseys.
Oh.
He gave us a Mets one and a Yankees one.
Wow. See,
Yeah.
I totally messed that
So
up.
that Brett Favre right there is coming down.
I'm all right with that.
Yeah, I know.
It's arch
Me
rival
too.
there for the
Me too.
49ers.
Trust me. me too.
I totally got that wrong by the way, because I thought you were making that shirt. I didn't know that was actually donated by him.
What? You thought I made a jersey?
Yeah, I didn't understand. I thought you were at. Never mind. Well, I'll talk about it off air.
All right.
Anyways, but I just I do want to put them out there because I think they deserve it, and I want them to know that they're getting exposure, so they know that they can continue to support us, and not only helping individuals, but we're all kind of winning from it. Journey Home, it's a new one for me, anyways. I'm not 100% familiar with them yet, but I plan on. I'm very thankful for them coming on board.
What we do know about him is somebody we care about
Yes.
a lot, went through there,
Yes.
and speaks very highly of the program. It's also one of the programs that, remember when they had that big flood or big weather issues over there? They actually suffered
Really?
a lot and then rebuilt. So
I did not know that.
Yeah. So they're going to be in town. I'm eager to meet with them. They're
on.
actually going to be volunteering at the tournament as well.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
And I'm 100% convinced too that the one we haven't mentioned yet that will also be at the tournament is Lambda Alpha Epsilon. I'm almost 100. I mean, I haven't reached out to her, but I guarantee it's just a phone call that they'll be out again helping us with the tournament.
Yeah, maybe some superheroes will show up.
Superhero. Oh yeah, the Wonder Woman. That's right. No, it's awesome co-ed fraternity, which I've never heard of until this. They've come out and helped us do a lot of our events, and they're so professional. They're so top notch. They're amazing every time they help. They made the tournament go well. I'm not a huge golfer, but what I love about this tournament is it feels like such a family event. Everybody just has a good time. I think it's very indicative of what we do as a foundation. People show up. It's not about who won or lost. I mean, of course, everybody's got their egos, but that's not the focal point. And it's about everybody coming together and supporting a good cause that they believe in, and just trying to make our dent in this world and make somebody's life a little bit better.
And over the weekend, the first person of this year, that got a scholarship from the foundation went into treatment.
Oh, yeah,
already.
that's right.
Into Retreat Premier Addiction Treatment Center is one of our major sponsors. So it's just coincidentally that somebody went in already at the beginning of this year. So it's awesome.
And then last but not least, and I saved them for last because Nova's Detox. We have different relationships with everybody throughout the organization. Some people do different things. But being the fact that I do a lot of the signage and things of that nature, some of these names I see more often than others. Novus Detox is one I've seen since like day one. Their green thing where it says Novus, like I have that imprinted in my brain because I've seen it so many times. And that's awesome. Like such a cool thing to have them coming out every year, and it just seems like they just are such a believer in what we do. They don't mind stroking a check and being a part of it, and for that we thank you. Eternally grateful for that.
They're actually one of the first. They're actually the first sponsor every year to say, we're putting you in your budget. Are you doing your golf tournament again? And then to say, hey, send us the invoice. They're like on top of it.
Yeah, they're almost more on top of it than we are at times, man.
No, that's a guarantee. They are more on top of it.
I was trying to be generous there, but
I appreciate it. Thank you.
I mean, you did lose to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So
I was mourning. I was in mourning.
Yeah. So, well, I've been mourning all year, so I don't want to hear that.
But it is by Blake Bortles, so that's a UCF alumni. How can I be too mad?
Well, and I don't feel too bad for supporting a local team in Jacksonville. So, even though I'm not a Jags fan, but I digress. Anyways,
I don't take it personal. Don't worry.
Look at that, full circle, guys, full circle. But that is important. It's a good way to end there. So we'll end there and say we have to make sure that we do our best to understand hurt people. We have to do our best to understand that these four truths are not just cool to say. They are actual truths that we have to learn to kind of abide by, essentially. And we have to understand that whether you want to or not, your brain is going to deem stuff. I like it, I don't like it, I don't care. You can't control that, but you can control what happens next. And by doing that, and by trying to make sure not to take things personal and realize people are just doing their best and failing miserably like we all are, that you can do your part to be better. See ya.
You think he plans it all out? Or just makes it up as he goes along?